ingredients in here. Today we are going to make some chicken shawarma naan sandwiches with some zucchini muffins. So we're going to first start by making our batter for our dough for our naan so it can sit and hydrate, and then we will work on our next part. So for this, we're going to need a cup of our sourdough discard. So we'll use Gus for this one. Give this a nice little stir. And we're going to use a whole cup, which is always a great when you have a recipe that can use a good amount of our discard. So now I'm going to put Gus over here. Keep him in the safe. I've already broken one jar today. Don't need to add to it. So 1 cup of our discard. And set this aside because we'll use this for our muffins. And then we're going to add in 6 tablespoons of water, which is the same as 90 milliliters. And then a 4th cup of olive oil. We're kind of getting all of our wet ingredients in here. Here we go. And we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of yogurt. You can also use sour cream in a pinch. You want to use plain. Don't use a flavored one. That would not taste very good. And I'm just going to eyeball this 1/2 cup. You don't have to be an exact measurement on it, but just in the ballpark. Okay. And then I'm going to put this over here because we're going to use this for our chicken shawarma marinade. That yogurt's going to help make that chicken delicious. And then we're just going to give this a nice kind of mix around, and then we'll add in our baking powder, baking soda, salt, and then our flour. But give this a good mix. And try to get any of those lumps out. There. Okay. Should be good. Now we're going to add in a 1/2 tablespoon of salt, so 1.5 teaspoons. And then 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and then a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So 1, 2, and then a 1/2 of baking soda. And then we'll give this a nice mix in there. Once that baking soda kind of starts reacting with the sourdough discard and the sour cream, it's going to make this a nice fluffy base to it. And then we'll mix in our flour. And then we'll let that dough hydrate or it gives it a better elasticity when we're rolling it out and cooking up our naan. But you can see as we mix it in, it's going to start to get light and fluffy. There we go. Okay, and now we're going to add in 3 cups of flour, just using all-purpose flour for this, but you can use bread flour. Either one works well for it. The baking soda and the baking powder are what's going to leaven this bread, give it its nice little rise on there. So I'm going to have to do that. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to add the dough will have a slight tack to it, but it shouldn't be so sticky that you can't work with it. If you find that yours is just a little bit sticky, and it can just depend on what type of yogurt you use, you might need to add a tablespoon or so more. But I'm going to use my dough whisk here, and then we will mix it up until we have kind of a nice dry shag form. And then I will turn it out on the counter, and we'll give it a couple of kneads until it forms into a nice cohesive dough. And then we're going to just let it sit and hydrate for a few minutes. And I will say minimum hydration time, 10 minutes. Optimal is around 20 minutes. That's when I feel like I get the perfect elasticity on there. But 10 is basic. Get all of that out. Just scrunch these together real quick. And then we're going to flip it out. It'll look a little dry at first, but once we start incorporating it in, then we'll get it. It'll form a nice cohesive dough. Yeah. We'll just knead it together and work it all in there. And then the dough will hydrate, which means it will kind of the liquid that we added in will allow it to kind of work together, make it a little bit more elastic. Yeah. And then we'll work in these little crumbs now that we've got a nice moist base to work with here. Yeah. And it should be a fairly soft dough. It's not going to be too tacky or anything like that, and too stiff. Uh-huh. And make it kind of form its bases. You don't have to knead it so long because we will give it a few more kneads after it's rested for a little while. So just kind of get it to work together and then we'll let it sit. Okay. And looking good. Okay, before we make our muffins, we're going to just go get our chicken marinating in its little seasoning so it can kind of have a sit. This is going to be a kind of a quick marinade, which means I'm going to use a little bit more spices than I would if I was doing a longer marinade on it. So we're going to start with a little bit of yogurt in here. Since I only have 2 big chicken breasts, I don't need a whole lot. So I'm just going to use about a 1/3 cup. And slide this over here. And then we're going to use some fresh lemon juice. And that will help, the acidity of the lemon will help break down the natural fat in the chicken and keep it nice and juicy. Okay, so juice from half a lemon. And then for our spices, we're going to use a little bit. I'm kind of switching it out. Normally I would use turmeric, but I'm out of turmeric. So I'm going to use a little bit of curry powder, which will give it a nice kind of curry flavor to it, which will work lovely with this. Just about a teaspoon. And then we're going to do some cumin, about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of cumin. Let me take the lid off. Yeah. We're going to use a little bit of paprika, about a teaspoon. And then we're going to do some onion powder. I do about a teaspoon and a half. And then we're going to do some coriander seed. I don't have any ground, so I'm going to crush mine and add it in here. But we need about, around a teaspoon. So I'm just going to crush it with my mortar and pestle here to bring it out. There we go. And that will make a nice flavor in it. And we're going to add this in here. And it has a coriander seed, has a lovely kind of almost like a lemony flavor to it. And then we're going to do some garlic salt. We're going to do about a teaspoon and a half here. And a few cloves of fresh garlic as well. We'll mince those up, put them in here. Then we're going to fillet our chicken breasts into half thin amount. And we'll let them marinate in this for just a few minutes while we work on our muffin. And then they'll be ready to kind of saute up. Since this is like the world's largest garlic clove here, we're going to mince it up. We need just around, teaspoon and a half of fresh garlic. We're going to make a lovely garlic sauce to go on top of that as well. So we don't need too much in here to really get that flavor popping. But a little goes a long way. And Mince it up nicely so we can get more of that flavor out. We'll add this in here. And then we're going to give this a nice little mix, and then we'll get our chicken filleted and then into our kind of sauce base here. Yeah. Okay. Smells wonderful. Now with our chicken here, I'll just do a little swing around. I'm going to fillet this in half, but I'm going to take off some of this little bit of fat here because we don't need that. And then I'm just going to cut right through the middle. This is a really large piece of chicken here. And try to cut against the grain so that you have a more tender piece of chicken once it's marinating up, which is going to give it a really rough appearance, but you're cutting up those fibers. That one should go well. Get this in here. We'll slice this through all the way. That way it's just a little bit easy. You could always chop it up into smaller pieces, like if you were going to grill it and put it on like a little kebab. But we're just going to keep it in these, and then we'll cut them up when they're done. I'll slide this over into the sink. And before I wash my hands, I'm just going to use my hands to completely coat the chicken up in this kind of our seasoned yogurt base. Grab those spices off my spoon here, and we're just going to really work it in here. And that way they'll have a nice chance to sit and marinate. Now, this is something you can definitely do and let them soak even longer to bring that, enhance that flavor in. I'm making more of a mild one. I used a bit more spices just to get a little stronger intensity on them, but not one that I have to marinate all day. Okay. My hands a nice rinse now. And then we'll let those rinse while we work on our muffins. Okay, for our muffins today, we're making a lovely zucchini muffin. And let me slide that up here. We're going to start with a 1/4 cup of melted butter, so a 1/2 of a stick. We'll add that in here. And then we're going to add in 1/2 cup of our sourdough discard. We're going to use some of Jacques, and that way I'll be able to feed them up and start some more, make some more sourdough. There, just about 1/2. Slide this guy over here. We're going to add this to our butter. And there we go. We'll mix those together, and then we'll get our eggs in. And then we're going to grate our zucchini, but we'll have to squeeze the extra liquid out of our zucchini because we don't want it to get have too much moisture in it, or it will mess with the consistency of our muffin. So let's give this a nice mix around here. So we've got our 1/4 cup of butter mixed into our 1/2 cup of sourdough discard. And then we're going to add in our 2 eggs. So 1 and 2. Slide this over for this. And then we're going to pop our yolks, and we'll mix it in until it's kind of incorporated into our mixture here. And then we will add in some vanilla, and then we're going to work on our zucchini. I've been just kind of wanting to make zucchini bread recently because when I'm driving around with my kids in the car, they always make us listen to this like Hits 1 radio station. And there's a song on there that part of the song literally says, "Eat zucchini." And now I'm like, I need to eat some zucchini. I was like, the zucchini farmers must have paid for this. We'll let that sit right there. And then I need about a cup of zucchini, but a cup of zucchini after you squeeze some of the liquid out. So it's going to be roughly around, two kind of zucchinis here. Small, these are small zucchinis, by the way. So if you have a good big one, that's great. And we're just going to grate it just like you would like cheese. Grates up nice and easy. You can do a finer grate if you want, but I kind of like the nice big ones for those chunks in there because once you squeeze that water out, they get fairly small. And you do not need to peel them at all. You have a nice, very tender skin on it, except if you're using one of the giant zucchinis. Giant zucchinis have really tough skin, I have found. So those are ones that I would like to peel. I remember one time I was in Iowa and I was in college, and I don't know why I needed to buy this zucchini for my one for me, but it was a zucchini this big and it was so huge. And I made like zucchini bread and like ratatouille, so many different things from it. But its skin was pretty tough. Okay, down to one. Let's kind of cut this little nub off. And then we'll get this next in here. And I will say the zucchini has like no flavor. It just takes on the flavor of whatever you're eating, but it's a great way to sneak in some extra veggies on there. My kids love zucchini bread. It was one of those things I remember making it, and it was for the longest time, it was Evie's favorite muffin or bread that I made. And when I was go through it and just make so many of them because we used to get so many zucchinis from our little crop box from the farmer's market. Okay. And here is our mountain of zucchini. Now, it definitely looks more than a cup, but I'm going to grab a paper towel here and we're going to squeeze that extra moisture out and it's going to shrink down. And it's very important to do this because you don't want that extra moisture in your things. And I find the easiest way, you can always put it in like a fine mesh strainer and do it. But if you just use your paper towel and really squeeze it out, it will kind of soak it up. Just kind of like when I need to make like a pumpkin cookie and I need to squeeze out the extra moisture from the pumpkin. Works great. Now I'm going to put this on here and then we're going to wrap it up and really give it a good smush. And then we should be close to around a cup. And this is just the faster one. You can also let it sit for like 30 minutes and then squeeze it out. Like once it sits for a while, it lets out its moisture. But you can do the press here. And it always surprises you how much liquid is actually in these. And then we're going to do just one last squeeze. We'll add them into our batter for this. And that moisture, getting all that extra moisture out is going to allow our batter to not get too liquidy. Okay, clean up a little bit of this mess because it's always a little bit messy. We're going to mix this in. Get that, pop those in here away from our thing. There. Lovely. And then we're going to add in a cup of brown sugar. That brown sugar is amazing with the zucchini. We're going to use a cinnamon flavor in here, so it's going to have that lovely base for it, but I do love the brown sugar with this. Finally restocked. We're going to use a cup. This is a half a cup. I'm going to pack it down, and then we'll do 2 half cups. So there's a half a cup, and pack it down, and another half a cup. So 1 cup of brown sugar, light brown sugar, but if you love dark brown sugar, that more molasses flavor, it works wonderful in this as well because we're going to be playing on those nice kind of cinnamon notes. We got our brown sugar in here. Mix it in. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla, a tablespoon of cinnamon, because again, we want that cinnamon to be popping. And then we'll add in some salt and some baking soda. And then our flour and we're making these a little bit healthier, so we're going to add in some oats and some ground flaxseed. Let me do my baking soda first before we do my vanilla. So we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda. It's going to give these a nice pop on them. A teaspoon of vanilla. And then we're going to do a half teaspoon of salt. And a tablespoon of cinnamon. That's going to be really popping for it because it's going to make it just so lovely with that zucchini, which is very, very mild base for it. So we'll mix those in, and then we're going to add in our ground flaxseed, our oats, and then our flour. But we want to add the flour in at the very end because we don't want it to be you don't want to overmix it. So we're going to do a 4th cup of flaxseed. Is that a 4th? Yes. Now, if you wanted to just kind of skip on the flaxseed and the oats, you can always sub them in for about a half a cup more of flour. And then we're going to do a half a cup of oats. I'm using old fashioned, but you could also use quick oats. I just would not use like steel cut oats. So
I have a question. Why flaxseed?
I really like the flavor that it adds in there. And then, of course, just like the added health benefits of it, you know, the omegas and stuff in there. It's very mild in flavor, and it pairs well with cinnamon, I find. So it's just a way to make something a little bit more nutrient dense for the kids and a little bit more filling. Let's mix these in. And it doesn't really mess with the texture of your baked good, as long as you don't go too overboard with it. There we go. So it's a lot of ways if I want, you know, kids eat a little bit like make stuff a little bit healthier, like my pumpkin or applesauce muffins. You can add that in there and it really doesn't change it. And then we're going to add in our flour. We only need a cup of flour because we have our discard in here, that flaxseed, those oats, and that zucchini is also going to add a base for it. Let me fill that pocket up. So 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and then we're going to mix these until they are just combined. Now, if you want to add in like a dried fruit or a nut, once you've kind of got them partially mixed, you can fold those into the batter, but we like to keep ours fairly simple. Here. And we're just going to mix it until it's combined. Again, you don't want to over mix this, and it's going to be a chunkier batter because it is that butter base, and then we have that texture from the zucchini. But the zucchini doesn't, when you cook it up, it's very tender, so you're not going to notice it. You'll probably notice the oats more than the zucchini.
Can you go over what discard is?
Discard is if you're making sourdough bread, you have your starter, which is essentially fermented flour and water that you leave on the counter, which is used to leaven your sourdough bread. And when you are making sourdough bread, you have to feed your starter flour and water before you're ready to make a bed. So typically you discard part of it, hence the word discard. And then so it's just kind of the base and you're not going to use. I do, if you're interested in making sourdough bread and all the recipes that can come with it, I do have a tutorial on how you can make your own starter and then how you can make your very own bread from the beginning. Now, just know that sourdough bread is not something that you're going to say, hey, I'm going to make sourdough bread today. Sourdough bread, if you don't have an active starter, takes about a week to get a starter made, but it's really, really simple. It takes about 5 minutes a day to get it going. And then to make a loaf, it's about 24 hours because you have this kind of proofing time where it sits and has this natural like leavening process through the natural yeast in it. But it is so delicious. And you can make so many things with sourdough discard, like these muffins, cookies, pasta, naan, which we use the discard in as well. So good. Okay, let's get these in here. We'll spoon them in. And then these are going to bake at 350 for about 20 minutes or so. Just make sure I've got all that flour mixed in. Looks good. I'm going to grab a metal spoon because it's a little bit easier to scoop out with that. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to put a big scoop in each one. And then we will fill them out and even them up. I like to make sure mine get filled up to the tippy top because I like those nice big bakery domes on my muffins. You know, that top, because everybody loves the muffin top. Nobody talks about the bottom of the muffin. So fill them up to get that. Here. So I'll go through and I'll add another scoop on there, but I always like to do little by little. That way you're not having to like borrow from another cup once you get there. Yeah. Grab that up. Here. And we'll slide that guy in. And now we're going to go back through and add a little bit more to each one. And if you add in like, you know, raisins, craisins, nuts, you're going to have a bit more batter in each one because, of course, that's a little extra mix in for it. Say pecans, walnuts are lovely in this. Here, and slide these guys up. Get our last little bits of batter in here. Slide this all the way down. Don't want any of it to go to waste. But it does. It makes a perfect dozen muffins. Okay. Let me grab this over here. And then we're going to pop this in the oven and bake these up at 350 for about 20 minutes. Now, sometimes, depending on how well you did at squeezing your liquid out of your zucchini versus how well you didn't do, it might take a little bit longer for them to bake up if you left a bit of liquid in there. But always start with your 20 minutes and then adjust with that. 350 degrees, 20 minutes. Now it's showtime. We're going to get our chicken shawarma made up and our naan cooking. Got a little bit of muffin batter on my hands. And then we'll clean up just a little bit of this area because this is what we'll be rolling out our naan here. Just a little bit. Slide this over. Not that zucchini in the naan would taste bad at all. It'd actually probably be delicious. Okay, I'm going to get my skillet here warming up so that it's nice and hot when we're ready to roll those out and cook it up. I'm going to have it heating up over around a 4. I don't cook mine on too high. And then we can get our chicken going and then we'll prep up our vegetables that we're going to have inside our chicken. So let's get my oil, which is right over here. And we can add our chicken in here. We'll sear them off on both sides for this. Just need about a tablespoon or so, enough to kind of make a nice little thin coat on the bottom of our pan. And then I'm going to heat my pan up on high because with that yogurt base on our chicken shawarma, it's going to really protect it, but we want a good sear. We don't want it just to drip out all of those juices. And then let's get our veggies prepped up for afterwards. We'll remove our chicken out and then we'll saute these vegetables up, kind of do a nice high heat saute on them so they've got that crispness to them, but a good, little saute marks. We'll do onions, peppers, and then I also have a little bit of zucchini for that. And then we're going to add an avocado because I dropped it this morning. And when you drop your avocado, you know that it's going to go bad soon. So I'm hoping it hasn't gone bad already, but I was grabbing them to put away and it just slid right out of my hand on the ground. Can't blame Jack for this one. It was all me. I was going to say, I was dropping a lot of stuff today. I loaded up my grocery haul, loaded up my car, had it there. Things must have shifted during the drive. Nice big new bottle of honey rolls out when I open up the back of my hutch and shatters on the ground. And you know how hard it is to clean up honey off of the ground? I mean, luckily it was outside and not inside our house, but it was very, very difficult to clean up. And I was like, I got to get all of this glass because, the amount of times that we walk outside barefoot and everything, you got to clean it up. And that honey just was impossible. It was such a thick honey too, and it was such a nice honey, and I was like so sad. I'll tell her to get some more. And I was talking to Evie about it in the store because she came with me after her little soccer game this morning. And I was like, oh, now we got to get the honey on the end aisles because the honey on the end aisles are the local ones. And you want to get the local ones because they're better for your allergies. And grab the last big bottle of this one. And it's so sad. That's why I was like, I'm going to make sure I put all of my jars to the back because I know I'm going to break something else. Get our peppers here nice and thin so that we can lay these inside our little naan wraps when we have them going. And then, of course, the little zucchini. For the zucchini, I'm just going to cut it right down the middle, and then we'll do kind of little half circles. And I'll cut them thinner because I want them to kind of cook up pretty fast. Well, you're going to do a pretty high heat, quick sear on them. So they keep a little bit of their crunch to them, but of course, get a nice tender, crisp sear on them. And then we'll make a lovely garlic aioli to have on there because you got to have a nice garlic sauce on your little wrap as well. Okay. I feel like we're getting close to being nice and hot here. Good little swirl. Feels like the heat is coming off there. While we're waiting, we can get our garlic and cooking for our garlic sauce. I'm going to put out a little bit of garlic here. Not that much.
You have a question. Who taught you how to cook?
Self-taught. I love cooking, and I started at a young age and making like family dinners when I was 13 years old. And I've loved it ever since and haven't stopped cooking. And so I am a much better chef now than I was when I was 13 years old. But anytime I wanted to learn a new skill, I just was like, you know what? I read up about it. I watched, like the techniques. I had like home cooking magazine and gourmet cooking and all of those things to kind of like help foster my love for it.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? I'm not 100% sure. I'm still thinking it through. I went grocery shopping, so too many options out there right now. But we have a soccer game, a baseball game tonight. So yesterday's Valentine's Day baseball game got rescheduled today. So I have a nice long drive. Basketball. Yeah, my brain. I have a nice long drive to figure it out on there.
And what type of pan is that?
This is our HexClad. This is a 12-inch frying pan from them. I do absolutely love HexClad. I made the switch about 2 years ago for it. They also have their griddle pan over here, which we'll use for the naan. But amazing. They cook so well. I have yet to scratch them. So they have been fairly, indestructible, at least for me. And I would say they cook really well. So it was one of those things when I was asking around when I got them, like, are these worth the money? Are they truly like indestructible? Because there's a lot out there that say they are, but then they don't survive me in the kitchen. And I have been very, very happy with them.
And can you go over what's on the chicken?
Yes. So we made it's a shawarma based sauce. So we made it with yogurt, lemon juice, some paprika, cumin, coriander, garlic, salt, onion powder, and a little bit of curry powder. We're out of turmeric, but has similar kind of flavors to it. So this will be more of like a curry shawarma, but delicious nonetheless. Okay. Get this garlic ready. And then let me grab my butter because I am fully stocked up with butter now. Very important ingredient in our house.
And how was the surf and turf last night?
Oh, it was so, so good. And I will say the shrimp was amazing. That was the first thing we tried from our seafood, our sea-to-table box that we got delivered. And it was delicious. I set out, I think, some red Maine fish to de-thaw to have sometime this week on there. So I'm kind of excited to try a fish one now. It's kind of nice. So I got these two boxes, the butcher box and then the sea to table. So one's seafood and one's like proteins. And so far, I've been very, very pleased with it on there. It's to the point where my husband is like, he's like, you're getting a little crazy because I was looking up for a fresh produce box. I was like, oh, I wonder if there's any farms that will do like a fresh produce that will deliver to our house that I don't have to then do as much grocery shopping for that. And I was like, okay, take a step back. Soon I'll have everything delivered. I was like, I wonder if Coca-Cola will deliver me, like a pallet of Diet Dr. Pepper to my house. Because, everybody's got to have their vice. And I do love my Diet Dr. Pepper. It's like, I think if you're a Diet Dr. Pepper lover or a Dr. Pepper lover, we're like a little group. It's so good. Our appliance man the other day who came here, and he was like me, shared my love for Dr. Pepper. It says like-minded people. That's the brilliant people. Okay, we've got our naan here, and you can see it's so much softer now. I'm going to kind of roll it up into a ball, and then we'll roll it out so we can start cooking it. My griddle is nice and hot. That is the one thing that will take you the longest, is heating up your griddle pan. So get it going before, so you're not waiting, ages for it. And then we're going to roll our naan out fairly, thin, not as thin as a tortilla, but thinner. The longer it sits, the easier it will roll out. So we've had it for about 10 minutes sitting, which is the minimum where you're not going to get tearing with it, but 20 minutes gives you the nicest one. I always say by the time I get to the last few that I'm rolling out, they're like perfect. Side to sides. Don't leave them too thick because they're going to puff up and they'll get thicker as they cook for it. And this is made with my sourdough discard on here, which is a great recipe to use a good amount of it. And then yogurt, flour, salt, a little bit of oil, because we cook this on a dry skillet. Okay. I think we're pretty good on this. I'm going to give my butter here a little swirl. And then we're going to flip our chicken here because I think we've got a good little markings on it. Beautiful. That one can go a little bit longer. This one looks perfect. Beautiful. I'm going to turn my pan. I'm going to let those two cook a little bit more. We're going to pop this down here. I'm going to turn it down nice and low. And then I'm going to add my garlic into that one up there. Minus that one piece of red pepper. And we'll let that kind of infuse into the butter, which is going to make our garlic aioli. So a nice little swirl around, but keep your temperature lower because we don't want it to toast up yet. We just want it to infuse at first. Get these guys cooking. Get this guy on here as well. Let me rotate this pan just a smidge more. I'll get him cooking up. And then while that one's in, we'll roll out our next one, and then we should be able to make our little sauce here. Now, I will say, it's easier just to roll these out one at a time than try to roll them all out because they will contract back in. And then if you roll them all out at one time, you'll have to kind of give them a little quick roll again. But again, you want to use a nice dry skillet. There's oil in our base of our naan, so that will kind of allow it to crisp up and prevent it from like sticking or burning on there. Drag my fingernail and a little roll out. Now you can also make these in so many different sizes. On there, sometimes I'll do smaller ones for little naan dippers, or I'll make lamb burgers and I'll make little naan like ones as the buns. So good on here. Or I'll do really big ones and I'll do a stuffed naan where you can put lots of different fillings inside it and then you seal them together. Also delicious. It's a very versatile thing. And I always use, I will say, I love naan so much that I've kind of subbed it out instead of like pita bread or other flatbreads because it's just so moist and tender. And you know, when you find a recipe that is just perfect, it's kind of hard to, you know, move from. Here, we'll let that sit there. Let's see if these guys are ready. Nice. Lovely. Beautiful. We'll get our chicken there. Cooking it up. I'm going to turn it down now to about a 6 now that we've got that good sear cooking up on there. And then while we're waiting, we can start to make our aioli based sauce now that our garlic is infusing. I'm going to grab a little bowl over here. This will work. And for this, we've got our butter, but we're going to mix that with some mayo in there. And then we'll have some fresh lemon juice and some green onions to kind of add a nice pop of flavor. We'll do about, I'm going to say like close to like a 1/3 cup of mayonnaise for this. And I will say when you're using mayonnaise, don't get the fat-free ones. You want that oil base in there to get that nice flavor for it. And then, of course, use the one you like. I feel like mayonnaise is, people love it. They have a brand that they love, and they own. I love Hellmann's because that's what I grew up on. But, you know, there's like the Kraft and the Dukes, and there are strong opinions about mayo in the South especially. Or whether you're a team mayo or team Miracle Whip. And I am a mayo all the way. No Miracle Whip. And we should be good with this one. I'm going to turn off my back burner here. But we've got a nice kind of infusion in here. So this is kind of our fat that we're adding to our mayo to make the base of our aioli. Bring it all the way in there. Set this over here. And then we're going to give it a nice mix together. Then we'll add in some fresh lemon juice, our green onions, a little bit of onion powder, and garlic salt for the base of it. But a good cursory mix to it first. Let's flip our naan over. Cook the other side because I think we're about ready. Looks like that. Beautiful. Now, when you put it down, the first side that you cook up has more of a textured side. The second side is more smooth. And it's just because this one, when you put it down, is not as warm when you put the other one on. So I always say there's the pretty side of the naan, and then there's the Shrek side, the bumpy toady side.
Oh, what did you add to the mayo?
So in the mayo right now, we added in about 2 tablespoons of melted butter with about a tablespoon or so of fresh garlic that we sauteed up in that butter. And now we're going to add in a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. That's going to make your base smoother because if you don't add it in there, it's going to be missing the acidity notes, but it won't be as smooth in texture either. We're going to add in some green onions. Get my kitchen shears here. I'm going to just cut off the lower parts. That way it will have a nice pop of color and a lovely fresh onion flavor to this. There. You could also use chives if you have them, which are smaller, a little bit more fragrant, less strong of that onion flavor to it. But Lovely. Let's check these guys out. See how are beautiful. Get that last little cook over on that final side. And looking amazing for this. And again, this is our chicken shawarma where we made a lovely yogurt marinade for it. So delicious on here. A little bit of garlic salt in here. You don't need to add too much because the mayo base has a good amount of salt in it. And then I add a little bit of onion powder because it adds a nice savory note as well. And then we're going to mix this together. And this will just be a really lovely kind of aioli that we can drizzle on top of our little sandwich thing. Be lovely. Take a quick little taste, see how it is. Beautiful. Doesn't need anything else. Gorgeous. Let's see how this guy's going. Perfect. So here's our beautiful, pretty side. Now, when you take it out, it's really important to rub it with some butter or brush it with butter. That is going to allow it to stay very flexible. If you don't do that, then what the outer bit of it can dry up. And then when you try to fold it like a sandwich, it cracks. So just a little bit, brush it over, and then you just let it sit there and you'll have that delicious one. Roll this next one out, and then our muffins are going to come out here in about a minute or two. And then we'll throw our vegetables on for a quick saute. We've got my one avocado that I'm going to cut up and add here for it. And then we'll take our chicken out in just a second here because it's just about done. And we'll let it rest before we kind of chop it up. Here. Slide this guy on here. And roll it out nice and thin, but not as, you don't have to go as thin as a tortilla. It will, if you leave it too thick though, it's going to take a lot longer to cook through on there. So don't go too thick or you'll be on your griddle pan forever. Now these are great if you have a pizza oven. These are really delicious in a pizza oven. Whenever I'm at my parents' house, because they have a nice outdoor pizza oven, I almost always make naan because it's just so good. And I will say, in case you need to know, this recipe withstands temperatures up to 1,000 degrees. So, very, very heat resistant. You just have to be very, very quick. And most, in case you did a pizza oven and your pizza oven is Italian, the big numbers on front are going to be Celsius first, and the small numbers will be the Fahrenheit numbers. It took me about a year to realize that and wondering why everything was cooking so fast, and then it dawned on me, this is not an American thing. This is an Italian one.
Interesting. It dawned on you?
It dawned on me, 100% me. Okay, let me grab these guys out. We're going to let them sit for just a few before we chop them up. We're going to grab our muffins out in a second, but before we do, I'm going to add a splash of oil to our pan, and then we're going to toss in our onions, then our peppers, and we'll saute them in these little tasty bits, which will add flavor.
Can you go over the process to make the naan?
Yes, so the naan, we started off with our sourdough discard, so we used a half a cup of that. We mixed it with, or a whole cup of that, and then we mixed it with 6 tablespoons of water and a 4th cup of oil. And then we added in baking powder and baking soda. So 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and then mix all of that together. And then we added in our flour. We added in 3 cups. Oh, and then a half a cup of yogurt as well. Mix it, knead it. When we get there, let me check this. See if we've got a nice firm, beautiful. And these are our gorgeous zucchini oat muffins. Let me take that off. Always check. That's how I know when they're done, is if you give them a little tap at the top. And if they're firm, you're done. If they have a little jiggle or a little wiggle, put them in for another minute or so. But gorgeous. Made with 2 zucchinis, a half a cup of oats, a 4th a cup of flaxseed, brown sugar, just all of this wonderful flavors to bring out cinnamon galore, and vanilla, but just a lovely kind of fun twist on it. Zucchini, if you've never had it in a muffin or a bread, it's not like a vegetable. It has a very mild flavor, adds great moisture to it, and it's lovely, especially in the summer if you grow zucchini and you have mountains of it, or you get them in your little CSA boxes, are amazing. Just giving our onions a quick turnaround in here with this. There, put these guys up. And I just want a kind of a quick saute on these. They don't need to sit too long because they're going to go on our things, and you want them to have a nice little crunch to them.
Are the Hagsplat pans your favorite pan?
They are for my nonstick. Yes, I absolutely love them. I had of their nonstick ones before. These are my favorite. It really depends what I'm cooking because I have a different sets of pans that I use for different things that I cook. So you have your Dutch ovens, and then I have all clad, which is my metal pans, which I use for certain things. So for nonstick cooking and for my most everyday, yes, I use these. I probably use them the most, and I love them.
And do you have a sourdough discard bagel recipe?
I do have a sourdough discard bagel recipe, as well as videos on how you can make it. Because I would say maybe once a month, I make homemade bagels on there. My kids love them. And we do them in lots of different flavors. And the best part about it is you have your base bagel flavor, and then it's your toppings that adds up. And then I love to make little bougie cream cheese spreads to go with it, so you can kind of jazz it up using just a base sourdough or cream cheese spread. But I have that video, and it's so good. And I believe I have that recipe card for our members as well. And I'm going to be putting that in our book section, in our kind of a breakfast one, because that and our English muffins, oh, so good. And it's a nice thing with the bagel, same with English muffins. You make the dough the night before, it sits on your counter. So all you have to do is shape them up in the morning and then boil and bake. Okay. Get these guys, quick saute. Then we're going to add in our zucchini on there. Let's check out this guy. Almost, just about. And then we'll get this this one on for it. Beautiful. Again, you've got your pretty side. Give it a nice little rub down of butter. You can also brush it with it if you don't have room temperature. We'll flip it over. Do both sides. Here. But the yogurt and the discard in these recipes make them so pillowy soft. They are just fantastic. Zucchini in here.
You get this question quite a bit. How do you stay so calm while cooking?
Honestly, years of practice. And I have 5 children, so cooking is a breeze compared to them. You know what? I think, years of practice, you get fairly comfortable in the kitchen. So you don't stress it. You know how long things are, and just understand that you're going to make mistakes and to not fret over them. Nobody's perfect. And so I make mistakes still all the time on there. Cameraman likes to point out that he is in fact perfect. But that's what I think. It's just time. You get more comfortable with it. I always say, like, the first time you pick up a knife and you're chopping things, you go very, very slow, meticulous, because you're not trusting yourself. And once you get there, things, and it comes naturally. And the timing of things. Once you understand how long certain things to take, then it might seem like, oh, I'm doing a million things, but things end at different times. And so when you know to start them, you're not getting flustered down at the last minute with everything coming out at one time or whatnot. And you can know what things can sit and rest a little bit longer versus others that can't. Okay, let's see. Ooh, it's so far, I'm glad I used it quickly, because this is right here is where I dropped it. And so I can feel it getting soft right there. It was one of those things I was like, no.
What is chicken shawarma?
It is kind of, so it's a like a Middle Eastern chicken dish that has some lovely like cumin, coriander, turmeric, these lovely like spices that you cook in a yogurt based sauce that keeps it, and lemon juice that keeps it very, very moist and tender. A lot of times, they'll do it on a grill, or kind of like how hero meat is. You stack it up on like a rotisserie and it cooks around. Really delicious stuff, but flavorful. It's so lovely because it is like a pop of flavor for it. And that yogurt, that lemon and yogurt, keeps it very, very moist and delicious. Okay, let's give this a quick toss. We're just about ready on those. We'll toss them with a little bit of garlic salt at the very end. And slice my avocados up. So I peeled my avocados because if you scoop them out, you can't ever get that really pretty avocado basting that they like to do on like your little sandwiches or your avocado toast. But if your avocado is nice and ripe, then the skin should peel off perfectly. If it's underripe, then it will stick, and then everybody knows what an overripe avocado looks like for it. We can use these to build our sandwiches. And now we're going to cut up our chicken to add into our little shawarma thing because it's had a chance to rest. You don't ever want to just take your chicken off and cut it up before letting it rest, because then all of those delicious juices in the chicken will kind of seep out.
Yeah, is pita bread missing yogurt? Is that why it's not so tender?
Pita bread is also made with yeast. Now, I know there's some people who've messed around or changed around and done some things, but typically it's with yeast in there, which gives it its pop. So, and it doesn't have a yogurt base in it. So there's kind of different leavening agents on there. Here we go. Perfect. So we've got our chicken. And this guy should be ready to flip over. And let's get a little bit of garlic salt on our veggies. Just season them up. And then we're going to be ready to serve up here. We just wanted to kind of a quick saute on them so they have that still almost like a fajita veggie, that nice firmness to them, not too overdone. And then we're cooking them in the pan with some of those spices from our chicken, so we'll have that great flavor on it as well. Here. Okay. Turn this guy off, and let's get ready to serve up our little lunch here. And let me grab, I've got tongs here for this. Got this guy nice and low to steam up on there. Let's grab, which one do I want to? We'll grab our first one. So you see how pillowy soft this guy is? So delicious. Oh, I need a plate. Okay, so for our little dish here, we'll have it. We've got our little naan here. We're going to take our garlic aioli, and while you could drizzle it on the top, if you do a nice little smeared like this across the bottom, you're going to have that flavor in every bite on it. So there's our garlic aioli. We're going to top it with our chicken here. So this is our chicken shawarma on there. And this is on top of our homemade naan on there, which is made with our sourdough discard and yogurt. We'll build up our sandwich there, putting on more piece of chicken. And then we're going to top it off with our sautéed veggies. We've got onions, peppers, zucchini in here. So really lovely kind of veggie there. And then a few slices of our avocado right over the top. Adds a nice little fresh beet in there. And look, you have this delicious sandwich. And then as a sweet treat on the side, we have our zucchini muffins with oat, flaxseed, and brown sugar and cinnamon for just that perfect little treat that's a little bit healthy and nice and lovely. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day. kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link and search for what we made. Our naan with our chicken shawarma and zucchini muffins, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my hex-clad pans and griddle pans in there, my knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us.